It is not a secret that Jonathan Lethem generally, and Amnesia Moon particularly, is very heavily influenced by the work of our friend Philip K. Dick, who we read earlier in the semester. The article by Umberto Rossi makes some clear points. Sometimes there are stretches. There are a couple minor errors of fact. He has Dick living in Marin County, north of San Francisco. Dick actually lived in the East Bay in Berkeley and Oakland for his basically his whole life, his entire adult life, certainly. Um, Lethem, you don't even need that essay. Lethem is spent part of his 20s as a Dick super fan, a collector of Dick, someone who had moved to the East Bay where Dick lived, working in used bookstores, who was an obsessive collector of Philip K. Dick, who volunteered with the Philip K. Dick Society, who never met Philip K. Dick because he didn't move to California until about a year after Dick, unfortunately, and prematurely passed away. Um, Volunteered forever. My favorite, and Lethem has written introductions to Library of America collections of Dick, Library of America collections of Dick, a long way from the kind of ratty mass market paperback, sometimes very disposable, in which Dick published in his lifetime. He has written an essay about his own super fandom. That's how I know these facts about them. They're not, I didn't find them out through telepathy. Um, it's well known. He actually, the funniest detail is that in the 80s and 90s, as the Philip K. Dick estate was trying to revive Dick's career and get his out of print works back into print, they they were short of actual physical copies of the minor works that were out of print. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep just stayed in print. Some of the other big hits stayed in print, but Dick wrote 37 novels that were published in his lifetime and 5 volumes of short stories, et cetera, et cetera. So the Dick estate didn't actually have copies to send to mainstream publishers back east. They had to buy them from some kid who collected them, and it was okay because Lethem would have, by his own account, 3, 4, or 5 copies of everything. Um, he is very clear about the fact that he reveres Dick, but knows Dick's limitation as a prose stylist, a kind of disastrous unevenness, as Latham puts it, sometimes on the same page. And that some of the books are very bad. Latham kind of takes blame. So, for example, by the end of the 90s, 2000s, Vintage was putting out handsome collections of Philip K. Dick in a uniform paperback edition, including ones that, like the World Jones made, um, which I cannot recommend, which Lethem himself particularly discommends in writing. But the sad fact is that book is probably in print because the Philip K. Dick estate bought an old copy or two of Jonathan Lethem and his capacious collection. What is not deniable, Rossi points out, and doesn't even need it's not an argument, it's simply a fact. Amnesia Moon specifically cites at least one Dick novel. Rossi makes arguments for others, but this is undeniable. In my edition on page 157, we get an extended reference to Dick's Dr. Blood Money. Sylvia Greenbaum is at the party at Ilford's house with her husband, Dennis Ard, and they're talking, she's talking about how terrible things were up in Marin County. It all came down to a tug of war between these two. Tree was this shambling old man. He liked to roam around picking mushrooms and talking to cows, just a feeble, eccentric old man. But he had us believe he was a German rocket scientist and that he'd blown up the world. We were supposed to feel all this guilt for him through the dreams because he was so sure he'd caused it all to happen. And then Hoppington was in this cart thing, like a wheelchair, but he was young. She stopped and smiled shyly at Everett. Then the mustache man put his hand on her shoulder, and she was encouraged to go on. And he was totally crazy, worse than Tree, and the two of them kept wrestling for control, back and forth. Everett must have looked confused. Sylvia's talking about West Marin, said Don. That is references to the characters who are only slightly renamed or not renamed of Dr. Blood Money here in a not prestige edition. You can see I bought this used too. This is actually from when Dick is on the way up because Phil's become a cult figure and his face is on it. And what you make of his cover art. You make of his cover art. What now? Many of the other writers we've studied this semester have made common cause with Dick in various ways. Robinson wrote a doctoral thesis and an academic monograph on Dick. Le Guin befriended and championed Dick, went into print calling him America's Borges. Lethem's essay, if you're interested, is called You Don't Know Dick, from which I take the problematic title of this video. Don't blame me, blame Lethem. Lethem was at one point almost literally Dick's biggest fan. What he takes from Dick, and certainly in Amnesia Moon, and works through in a very concerted way, without trying to be, and Rossi's right, he's not trying to be imitative, he's trying to digest what is he finds best in Dick, which is the surrealism, the problem of reality, that reality keeps falling out. There's no certitude for reality. Some of the paranoia. Dick is an extremely paranoid view. That's part of why things keep turning out to be secretly something else and reality is never what it seems. There's an enormous distrust in Dick of political power. Lethem was raised as an extreme leftist activist. He was raised to take it to the streets and fight the power in a very 1960s and 70s clearly defined leftist activist way. Dick, who lived through the 60s and 70s, was not that guy. Despite being in Berkeley, California, he was deeply not that guy. But he was suspicious of power and authority because he was paranoid. He wasn't paranoid about Richard Nixon because he was ideologically ill at ease with Richard Nixon and conservatism. He was paranoid about Richard Nixon because he was paranoid, baby. He was paranoid about JFK and Ike, too. If he'd lived long enough, he would have been paranoid about everybody. Dick was sometimes very troubled. Where Lethem parts with Dick is that he pays much more attention to prose. This is a much better crafted book. Where Dick later in life, after what you've read, Dick eventually moves to a sense of a higher meaning, which is based on Dick's own idiosyncratic religious ecstatic experience, what he titled one of his novels The Divine Invasion, in tribute to this, where he believes he was in communication with some higher power. Oh, that's a research rabbit hole that might make you very sad. So for Dick, there's a kind of divine truth behind all these kind of endless boxes. In Amnesia Moon, there isn't. There's no truth beyond these finite subjective realities. There's no truth except this fight for dreamers to assert themselves. And actually, what I find makes Everett most appealing is his refusal to fully impose on others, his reluctance to use his power, where every other dreamer we meet is more than happy enough to use and frankly flagrantly abuse their powers. One thing that Lethem has oddly in common with Dick is Dick, because he writes so quickly, much, much faster than an art novelist like Lethem ever could, Lethem writes a lot more drafts and is expected to meet a higher prose standard by his editors. But Dick's ideas tend to slop over from one novel to another. So there'll be an idea he picks up and he doesn't fully develop it and then let it in one novel and then let it go. He's working it in a novel and then he finishes that novel on a formal plot level. He moves to another and the idea is still kicking around. He keeps that going around. There seems to be a problem with boundaries from one book to another, which is one reason to read a lot of him. The reason not to read a lot of him is like it's a lot of up and down prose in one place in a short period of time. Amnesia Moon, just moving from like catastrophic idea to catastrophic, and something having those jumps is partly like Dick running over the boundaries of his own novels and stories, using an idea from work to work, but also the strange way that Dick, in that dreamlike logic of his, drops a concept and introduces a new concept out of nowhere. You've seen this yourself in the Dick we've read just for this class. Okay. Professor's Mailbag, you want more videos on Amnesia Moon? All you have to do is ask me and give me a little time.